Hey, good morning. So in the last class, we have discussed the various types of irrigation, the various methods of irrigation. So now today, we shall discuss the water requirement of crops. So generally, any crop requires three basic constituents, that is water, air, and sunlight. And soil becomes the medium for growth of any crop or any plant. So the water requirement crop plays a very important role in increasing the yield of the crop. So hence, water is required for all crops for its healthy growth and also to have the maximum yield of a particular crop. And different crop requires different quantity of water in their growing season. So now, soil water crop relationship. So the aim of irrigation engineering or irrigation practice is to ensure that the plants have an adequate supply of water in the root zone for achieving optimum yield of crop without damaging the quality of the soil. So now soil becomes a medium for any plant growth, and this necessitates a clear understanding of the interaction among the soil, water, and plants in the root zone of the plant. Now, water is required by plant in small quantities for its metabolism, that is photosynthesis, and in much larger quantities in the physiological process of transpiration, which protects the plant against the injuries effect of high temperature. Especially in the summer months, the transpiration losses will be very high. So, in addition to water, air must also be present in the root zone for the respiration of the microorganisms which are responsible for healthy growth of the crop to occur and to provide a favorable environment for the root development and absorption of the nutrients. Generally, the water and nutrients are absorbed by the plant through the roots. As such, the excess water must be drained out from the root zone for the free circulation of air in the root zone. So if the root zone becomes over irrigated, then the plants may finally die because of the shortage of the air or the circulation of air in the root zone. So for proper growth of plants, requisite quantities of water, air, and nutrients must be available in soil at sufficient quantity during the different growth stages of the crop. So therefore, while practicing irrigation, it must be ensured that these quantities, three quantities are available in the correct proportions. So we have to choose a method of irrigation which meets all these three requirements, that is the air, nutrients, and the water, the root zone of the crop. Now, the functions of irrigation water. What are the basic functions of irrigation water? Water and nutrients are the most important requirements of plant. So following are the main functions of irrigation water. So water dissolves the nutrients and forms a solution of the nutrients, and which are easily absorbed by the roots, and thus water acts as a nutrient carrier. So second function of irrigation water is the irrigation water supplies moisture, which is essential for the life of bacteria that is present in the soil, which are beneficial for the plant growth. So these bacteria will convert the nutrients into food products for the beneficial for a healthy growth of any crop or any plant. So irrigation water supplied moisture, which is essential for the metabolism within the plant leading to the plant growth. So this metabolism is basically the photosynthesis process, because every plant produces its own food in the process, by the process of photosynthesis. Some essential salts present in the soil react in the presence of water to produce nutrients or nourishing food products to the plant growth. And water cools the soil and atmosphere. That means water cools the surrounding environment, which is beneficial for the plant growth. And it also softens the tillage bands, that is area to be irrigated. So whatever the tilling process that can take place, so it softens the tillage bands of the soil, the area to be irrigated. So these are some of the functions of irrigation water. Now, water, when you supply water, it should have less amount of impurities. So if the water supplied to the crop has more amount of impurities, then the plant or the crop may finally die. So impurities, suitability of water for irrigation. So in order to perform the required functions for optimum growth of plant, the water may be turned as unfit if the sediment concentration is excessive, because if the sediment concentration is excessive, the air pockets will be filled with these sediments, hence plant root will not have sufficient air for its healthy growth. Now, the total concentration of soluble salts like sodium, calcium, and magnesium and potassium, if it is in excess, finally the plant is going to die. And the percentage of bicarbonates of calcium and magnesium becomes excessive, then also leads to the improper growth of the plant, and hence the yield of the crop may reduce. And the percentage of sodium ions to that of other ions is excessive, then also it becomes an unfavorable situation for the plant growth. And chemical toxic elements such as boron concentration to plant and persons using this plant as food. So nowadays we heard that so many pesticides are for the plant, so it becomes toxic for the persons who use such for plant foods. And chemical which reacts with the soil to produce unsatisfactory moisture characteristics, and bacteria injurious to persons or animals eating the plant irrigated with such water. So the quality of water plays a very important role, especially in irrigation. So whatever the water that is supplied to the plants should be have good quality of water should be supplied. Now, soil's texture. So soil becomes the medium for growth of any crop or any plant. So soil texture refers to the composition of the soil, and it is reflected by the particle size, shape, and gradation. So generally the soil occurring in nature, it's of a combination of sand, silt, and clay, and the relative proportion of sand, silt, and clay in a soil mass determines the soil texture. So according to the International Soil Classification, the range of or the diameter of particles of each of these components of the soil as indicated in the table below. So for porous sand, the range of particle diameter in millimeter should be in between 0.2 to 2. That is fine. It is treated as fine. So it is not, I think it is 2 to 0.2. Then if it is sand, it is between 0.2 to 0.02. And if it is silt, 0.02 to 0.002, and clay less than 0.002. So these are the range of particle diameter according to International Soil Classification. Now, according to the textural gradation, the soil may be broadly classified as the open or light textured soil contains very low content of silt and clay, and hence these soils are porous or sandy. So it is highly permeable. Porous or sandy soils are highly permeable when compared to silt and clay. Next, the medium textured soil contains sand, silt, and clay in seizable proportions. In general, loam is a soil which has all these three major size actions in seizable proportion, and that is in correct proportion. And hence, the loams are medium textured soil. And the tight or heavy soil like clay soil contains high percentage of clay. Thus, clay soils are tight and heavy textured soil. So depending upon the textural gradation, so the soil are classified as the porous or sandy soil, or it is the loam or medium textured soils, or it is heavy textured soils like clay. Now, this is the figure which shows the textural triangle. So these things I think you have studied in your soil mechanics 1. I don't want to go in detail with this. And these are the picture shows the different types of soil. The sandy soil is the best one, and soil which contains equal proportions of silt, clay, and sand, and also this is clay soil which contains heavy percentage of clay, so which is called as a tight soil. Next, the classification of soils. So the classification of Indian soils are, the first one is the alluvial soil, The second one is black soil. The third one is red soil. And the fourth one is laterite soil. And the fifth one is clay soil. And the final is the sandy soil. So in our country, we have all these types of soil in different parts of our country. So alluvial soil, these are the soils formed due to the deposition of water in Indo-Gangetic plains. So these soils are very fertile and also absorbs good amount of rainfall. That means the moisture retention in case of alluvial soil will be very high. So the plant roots can extract water as and when it is required. And red soil, it is a residual soil which is left over in the same place as a result of decay of underlying parent rock and covering parent rock. So these have light texture and good porosity, varying fertility and low soluble salt content. Such soils are found in central and peninsular part of India. Laterite soil, especially in the coastal region, we find these laterite soil. So these are residual soils commonly found in coastal region. So these are usually porous and well drained, and they do not contain common nutrients required for plant growth in sufficient quality. So to grow any type of crop, the laterite soil is not suitable. And black soil, the texture of this varies from clay to loamy, and they develop cracks on account of drying by heat or sun, especially in the summer months. You can see some cracks on the top layer of the soil, and it has good drainage, especially the black cotton soil is preferable to grow cotton crops. It is a very good soil for growing cotton crops. And clay soil, they are heavy and potentially rich in soil but lacks drainage, especially in the clay soil. All the soil particles are held tightly together. So next is sandy soil, found in desert areas and has high pH value greater than 6, low organic content and free drainage. So classification of the soil according to the age of formation. In this method, the soil has been subdivided as young soil, or it is also called as youth soil. Soil which is fully pervious is called as youth soil or young soil. And mature soil, so soil which is less permeable and which has higher organic content. Organic content is called as the mature soil. And sensile soil, soil which has little or no productivity and it has become hard and impermeable. So based on its age, the soils can be classified as young soil, mature soil, and sensile soil. And classification according to the geological formation. The residual soil is the result of soil formed by disintegration of rock by various actions in the same place due to weathering actions. Whatever the residual is called as the residual soil. And alluvial soil formed by deposition of waterborne carried by the materials, and especially in the rivers, you get these types of soil, that is alluvial soil. And allodial soil, soils formed by deposition of wind action. So the soil particles are carried by the wind, so it is deposited at some places. So it is called as Aeolian soil. And colluvial soil formed by depositing by rainwater below the foot of the hills. So it is called as colluvial soil. And glacial soil, soils formed by the transportation and deposition of by the glaciers is called as glacial soil, especially in the foot of mountains you will find these types of soil. And volcanic ash deposited due to the volcanic eruptions is called as volcanic ash. And soil of aggradation, soil form accumulation in layers is called as aggradation. And soils of degradation, soil which is continuously zoning out of due to the erosion process, especially in the hilly areas, the soil erosion is a common phenomenon. And impervious soil deposited on odd layers to form new set of soil and cemented by calcium carbonate, iron oxide, and silica. So based on its geological formation, the soils are classified like this. And classification based on its soil content. So pedo-ochal, so soil which is rich in calcium carbonate, and pedoifer, soil which is rich in aluminum and iron salts. And humus soil, So soil which is rich in organic matter or salts. So next classification is based on its particle size. A composed soil can be classified on the basis of its particle size. So particular soil has porous, medium, fine grain, depending upon the percentage of sand, silt, and clay. So it is based on the particle size distribution. Next, soil can also be classified as according to its regional basis. So region of heterogeneous of soil development, regions of balanced decomposition, regions of excessive denitrification, and regions of eroded erosion accumulation. So it's based on the regional basis. And now the soils can also be classified based on its water availability in soil. So classification of availability of soil water in a given soil mass. So water in the soil may be present in the following ways. That is, first one is the hygroscopic water content. And the second one is the capillary water content. The third one is the gravitational water content. Now you can see here, this figure shows, suppose if you keep a oven dried soil sample, suppose if you ಯಾರು ಮ್ಯೂಟ್ ಮಾಡ್ಕೊಳ್ಳಿ please. Suppose if you keep a oven dried soil sample to an open atmosphere, it absorbs certain amount of water. So which is incapable of movement. So that portion of water is called as the hygroscopic water content. That means if you keep a oven dried soil sample which is exposed to the atmosphere, it absorbs certain amount of water from the atmosphere, so which is incapable of movement. So this portion is called as the hygroscopic water content. Next is the capillary water content. So this capillary water content is in excess of the hygroscopic water content. So this capillary water content is in excess of the hygroscopic water content, and this capillary water content will be readily available for the plant roots. So this, in any soil sample, the capillary water content plays a very important role. So this portion of the water will be available for plant root. And the gravitational water content, which is in excess of this capillary water content. So this gravitational water content will not be available for the plant root. It moves down due to the force of gravity and finally builds up the groundwater. So classification of availability of soil water. So water in the soil may be present in the following three ways. That is, first one is the hygroscopic water content. The second one is the capillary water content. And the third one is the gravitational water content. Now, the hygroscopic water content is nothing but when you keep an oven dried soil sample open to the atmosphere, it absorbs certain amount of water. So like cement. So when you keep the cement exposed to the atmosphere, it absorbs certain percentage of moisture. So it is highly hygroscopic. Like that, when a oven dried soil sample is kept open to the atmosphere, it absorbs certain amount of moisture. So which is incapable of movement. So hence this portion is not available for the plant roots. So next is the capillary water content, which is in excess of this, the hygroscopic water content. And this capillary water content, so these water molecules are held in between the soil particles, expelling the air, and this portion is available for the plant roots. And the gravitational water component is in excess of this capillary water content, and which moves down due to the force of gravity, and which finally builds up the groundwater table. Now this figure clearly shows the classes of availability of water in a soil sample. Now you can see here this dotted figure, which shows the hygroscopic water content, and this portion is not available for the plant. So next is the capillary water content. Capillary water content is this region. So this region is capillary water content, and this is in excess of this hygroscopic water content, and this capillary water content will be available for the plant roots. And next is the gravitational water content, gravitational water content, which is in excess of this capillary water content and which will not be available for the plant root. It moves down to the due to the force of gravity and finally builds up the groundwater table. So now you can see here, you can see a dotted line. You can see a dotted line. So this dotted line is an index line, so which is called as the wilting coefficient line. Wilting coefficient line. So now, from this point to this point, that is the upper range of the capillary water content, upper range of the capillary water content to this level. So this is called as the available water or available moisture for the plant growth. Available moisture or the available water content for the plant growth. And this, from this point to this point, it is superfluous water. So this gravitational water content is also called as superfluous water content, and this is also not available for the plant roots. And from this point to this point, it is the unavailable water content, and this portion of the water content will not be available for the plant roots. So only between this and this, that is the upper range of the capillary water content, the upper range of the capillary water content, and this is up to the wilting coefficient line. So this portion of the water content will be available for the plant root. So hence it is called as the available water. So the classification of availability of soil water is classified into three types. The first one is the hygroscopic water content. The second one is the capillary water content, and third one is the gravitational water content. Now, the upper limit of the capillary water content, is also called as the field capacity of the soil. It is also called as the upper limit of the available moisture content. Field capacity is also called as the upper limit of the moisture content. So now, when the plant roots starts extracting water, the water content in the soil starts depleting, correct? And it reaches a point which is known as the wilting coefficient. Up to this point, the plant roots will not have any extra energy to absorb the water. So from this point to this point, that is from the upper limit of the available moisture or field capacity, the plant root starts extracting water from the soil, and the water content in the soil starts depleting. So when the water content reaches this point, so you need fresh doses of irrigation water to bring back the water content to its field capacity. So between this range, that is from the field capacity to the wilting point, so this portion of the water, this portion of the moisture is called as the available moisture. And readily available moisture is nothing but 75 to 80% of this available moisture. Suppose when the plant root starts extracting water from the moisture from the soil, the moisture content in the soil starts depleting, and when it reaches this point, you need fresh doses of irrigation to bring back the water moisture content to its field capacity. Suppose if you don't supply water, so the moisture content in the soil falls below this wilting point, and the plant will have the hygroscopic water content, and so the plant roots are incapable of absorbing this hygroscopic water content. Hence, the plant will finally going to die. So in any case, the moisture content in the soil, should be between its field capacity and the wilting point or the wilting coefficient. Now you can see here hygroscopic water content. When an oven-dried soil sample is exposed to atmosphere, the soil absorbs some amount of water from the atmosphere, and this water absorbed by the soil is called hygroscopic water, and it is not capable of moving either under capillary action or gravitational force. And second one is the capillary water. So it is that part of water in excess of hygroscopic water which exists in the pore spaces, that is voids of the soil due to molecular attraction. And the gravitational water content is that part of water which is in excess of hygroscopic and capillary water, which will move out of the soil under favorable condition. So next, soil moisture constants, that is field capacity. So we have, with respect to that figure, we have discussed what is field capacity. It is defined as the maximum amount of moisture which can be held by a soil against gravity. Thus, immediately after the gravitational water has drained off from the saturated soil mass, the field capacity is the upper limit of the capillary water content available for the plant roots. And field capacity is usually given as the weight of the maximum amount of moisture held by the soil against gravity per unit weight of dry soil, and it is expressed in percentage. So field capacity is nothing but it is the ratio of weight of maximum moisture content held in the soil between the pore spaces divided by the weight of the dried soil sample multiplied by 100. So it is always expressed in terms of percentage, or else the field capacity is nothing but it is the upper limit of the capillary water content. Now, saturation capacity, that is maximum moisture holding capacity. It is defined as the amount of water required to fill all the pore spaces between the soil particle by replacing all the air, and it is inclusive of hygroscopic water content and capillary water and gravitational water. So when the porosity of the soil sample is known, the saturation capacity can be expressed as the equivalent depth of water in centimeter per meter of soil depth. So the saturation capacity, it contains all these three water content, that is the hygroscopic water content, the capillary water content, and also the gravitational water content. And if you know the porosity of the soil sample, then the saturation capacity can be expressed as the equivalent depth of water in centimeter per meter of soil depth. So suppose, for example, if the porosity of the soil sample is 50% by volume, the moisture in each meter of saturated soil is equivalent to 50 centimeters on the field surface. So the saturation capacity mainly depends on the porosity of the soil. Suppose if the porosity of the soil is say 40% by volume, then the moisture in each meter of soil, saturated soil, is equivalent to 40 centimeter on the field surface. Next, the permanent wilting point, or it is also called as the wilting coefficient. So now it is that water content at which plant can no longer extract sufficient water from the soil for the growth and becomes permanently wilted. That means when the moisture content in the soil reaches that wilting point, or the permanent wilting point, then the plants can no longer extract sufficient water from the soil for growth and it becomes permanently wilted. So at permanent wilting point, the film of water around the soil particles is held so tightly that plant roots cannot extract enough moisture for its metabolism process. So next, it is the lower limit of the available capillary water content. You can see here. So this permanent wilting point, or the wilting coefficient, it is nothing but it is the lower limit of the available moisture, or it is the lower limit of the capillary water content. So at permanent wilting point, the film of water around these soil particles is held so tightly that plant roots cannot extract enough moisture for its metabolism. It is the lower limit of the available capillary water content, and it is usually expressed as the weight of water held in soil per unit weight of dry soil when the plants are permanently wilted. Next, permanent wilting point differs from the soil to soil, but it is same for the different plants grown in the same soil. So it may depend from soil to soil because of the pore spaces, because mainly the soil moisture is held between the soil particles. So it depends from different types of soil, but it remains same for all plants grown in the same soil. Next, the permanent wilting point is expressed as percentage. It is as low as 2% for light sandy soil, and it may be as high as 30% for heavy clay soil. So the time is running out. So please mark your attendance in the chat box. I'll be ending the session. So anyway, I have shared one assignment, first assignment in the Google Classroom, and go through that assignment, and you have to submit that assignment on or before 19th of this month. So we shall meet on Monday. So thank you so much. I'll be ending the session.